Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrael Hawkins, where we're going to be talking a little bit about BRICS. And you remember some time ago that was set up to kind of challenge the U.S.'s hegemony with the dollar. A little bit of the trouble that's taking place in China, between China and the U.S. with the economy, but also between China, the U.S., and Taiwan and their investment there. And we're going to talk about the ongoing conflict involving Iran and the United States and Israel. But to start us off, BRICS. Well, it started as a new collection of countries that was established to challenge the international dominance of the U.S. dollar. But how is it progressing so far? Well, the next video will shed more light on this topic. Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm Steve Clemens, and I have a question. BRICS was going to be the next big thing, a powerful alternative to the U.S.-centric global order. But now, is it slowly fizzling away? It started as an informal group of countries that wanted to break the West's stranglehold of the global economy. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and later South Africa were trying to find ways to reduce their dependency on the U.S. dollar. Over the years, the BRICS have expanded to include more than a dozen new members and partners, representing half the world's population and more than a third of its wealth. But with each expansion, the goalposts seem to shift, and U.S. President Donald Trump keeps threatening to hit them hard if they ever become, quote, meaningful. So are the dreams of becoming a major political force in the world order, even an alternative to the G7, basically dead?
Well, President Trump is pretty, vocal in the fact that if it does grow to be something that is, worth, stepping to the plate for, the United States is actually going to do something about it because they want to make sure that they maintain that dominance with the U.S. dollar.
Right. And when BRICS first started, it seemed like it had a very straightforward direction that it was heading. But now, as you heard there, it kind of is changing. So they might not want to face what President Trump would do if it does, as you said, amount to anything.
That's right.
Well, the U.S. has had its crosshairs on China for quite some time now, considering China's military and economic growth over the past few decades. The Asian country is gaining speed on the U.S.'s economy and has drawn more attention to itself as a result. Now, let's take a look at this next video on how China's growth is a concern for the United States. Take a look.
The world police. It's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek term thrown around to deride the US, but does the world actually need one strong, capable leader? Without it, is there chaos or greater global cooperation? The rise of China, coupled with President Trump's America First policy, has thrown the current world order off balance. So, are we witnessing a changing of the guard? Since retaking the White House, President Donald Trump has made some bold and seemingly irrational moves, upending the global trading system, openly criticizing Ukraine and re-engaging with Russia, and even threatening to take Greenland by force. They may appear unrelated, but there is one common thread.
China. China.
China.
China. China.
China.
China. China. China.
China.
China. China wants to make a deal.
China is the biggest threat to the US as the dominant superpower since the Soviet Union. China's GDP is projected to reach $25 trillion by 2030, second only to the US. America has a larger defense budget, but China's manufacturing capabilities are unrivaled. And then there's China's pragmatism. Unlike previous US administrations, China's global alliances and deals aren't underpinned by ideology. It boasts win-win deals to build highways, high-speed rail lines, and other critical infrastructure without becoming embroiled in domestic conflicts, regime change, or multi-trillion-dollar wars. Today, on Counterpoints, we'll debate if Trump's actions show the US has accepted that China is a real threat to its dominance. What will determine global dominance in the future? And how will the US-China competition affect global conflicts?
Well, the economy is only second to the United States, but you really can't challenge China in its manufacturing department. It just pumps out copious amounts of things continuously, and that's kind of where they seem to have the dominance. Not so much, but they really do well in manufacturing.
Right, and they never seem to slow down. So that's the projected growth is really going to continue to leap forward. So they can challenge the U.S. in that regard.
That's right. Well, staying within the continent of Asia, Taiwan is boosting its military and hopes to be fully armed by 2027 to combat China's proposed forced reunification of the island back to the mainland. Well, as a result, Taiwan is boosting its military defense spending by $40 billion and will receive advanced weapons from the United States.
Well, since the U.S. and China have reached a shaky truce in their trade war, the question looms as to whether or not the U.S. is willing to jeopardize the progress made in pursuit of supporting Taipei's military. Now, Japan's Prime Minister recently said that an attack on Taiwan would threaten Japan and would therefore justify a military response.
Right. Well, there has been a major U.S. buildup in military might focused on Iran. The USS Gerald Ford, a second aircraft carrier, moved closer to the region. U.S. combat planes are also landing on Israel's international airport, where there is already a presence of F-22 stealth fighter jets. Now, with the threat of war in the air, the United States diplomats have been encouraged to leave Israel. The UK and France are also telling their residents to avoid travel to Israel, and Italy is urging any citizens in Iran to leave immediately.
Well, what is going on along the lines of diplomacy? Well, two very different stories. American President Donald Trump says, I'm not happy with the fact that they are not willing to give us what we have to have. So I'm not thrilled, he said, with that. We'll see what happens.
Well, in a Face the Nation interview with Margaret Brennan, the foreign minister from Oman, who is mediating talks between the two countries, was pleading for more time from both sides, saying, quote, I am confident with my assessment, the way the talks are going. I think that the peace deal is really within our reach, end quote.
Well, regardless of the rising tensions in the Middle East, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is planning to arrive in Israel next week while the scheduled talks between Iran and the U.S. are taking place in Vienna.
Well, the United States is not seeing the results they want with diplomacy, so President Trump has launched combat operations directed at Iran. Well, please listen close to the president's words as he tells Americans Iran has been behind many terrorist attacks on the U.S. and the world, while encouraging Iranian citizens to take cover from the bombings and take back their country from the Iranian government. Let's take a look.
The United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages for 444 days. In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 American military personnel. In 2000, they knew and were probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole. Many died. Iranian forces killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. The regime's proxies have continued to launch countless attacks against American forces stationed in the Middle East in recent years, as well as U.S. naval and commercial vessels in international shipping lanes. It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer. From Lebanon to Yemen and Syria to Iraq, the regime has armed, trained, and funded terrorist militias that have soaked the earth with blood and guts. And it was Iran's proxy, Hamas, that launched the monstrous October 7th attacks on Israel, slaughtering more than 1,000 innocent people, including 46 Americans, while taking 12 of our citizens hostage. It was brutal, something like the world has never seen before. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terror and just recently killed tens of thousands of its own citizens on the street as they protested. It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular, my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. I'll say it again, they can never have a nuclear weapon. That is why in Operation Midnight Hammer last June, we obliterated the regime's nuclear program at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. After that attack, we warned them never to resume their malicious pursuit of nuclear weapons, and we sought repeatedly to make a deal. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. Again, they wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to practice evil. But Iran refused, just as it has for decades and decades. They've rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions, and we can't take it anymore. Instead, they attempted to rebuild their nuclear program and to continue developing long-range missiles that can now threaten our very good friends and allies in Europe, our troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland. Just imagine how emboldened this regime would be if they ever had and actually were armed with nuclear weapons as a means to deliver their message. For these reasons, the United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We're going to annihilate their Navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces and no longer use their IEDs or roadside bombs, as they are sometimes called, to so gravely wound and kill thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon. This regime will soon learn that no one should challenge the strength and might of the United States Armed Forces. I built and rebuilt our military in my first administration, and there is no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication. And there is no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication. My administration has taken every possible step to minimize the risk to U.S. personnel in the region. Even so, and I do not make this statement lightly, the Iranian regime seeks to kill. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war. But we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission. We pray for every service member as they selflessly risk their lives to ensure that Americans and our children will never be threatened by a nuclear-armed Iran. We ask God to protect all of our heroes in harm's way, and we trust that, with his help, the men and women of the armed forces will prevail. We have the greatest in the world, and they will prevail. To the members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the armed forces, and all of the police, I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or, in the alternative, face certain death. So, lay down your arms. You will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass. May God bless the brave men and women of America's armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Well, Ketan, you can see there President Trump defining the reasons why he believes that this is necessary for the United States to attack Iran, and then actually telling the people right there what to expect. The Iranian people, stay inside. It's going to be very dangerous, but when the smoke clears, be ready to take over your country.
Right, so he's really kind of saying, hey, we got this ball rolling, now it's up to you guys to carry it down to the other side of the court, really trying to get them to take the ball, take the helm, and basically kind of restart a new government, which is kind of what we saw in the indications with the United States making statements about, the Iranian government threatening and arresting and abusing the protesters, right, sometimes back. Now we're seeing it lead up to this. So yeah, we see a change that's coming.
Right. They always talk about the regime change that's necessary. All right. Well, there indeed has been a joint attack between Israel and the U.S. with the goal of taking out Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei. Now take a listen to this next report.
Bring in Alan Fisher in Washington for now. Alan, tell us what's the latest from Washington, D.C. The U.S. Confirming that it is also involved in this attack on Iran. What's the extent of its involvement?
Well, I've been texting with someone who surprisingly is awake at 2 in the morning because they also heard of the attacks on Tehran. They seem to suggest that they believe that the United States' involvement in this is towards decapitating the head of the Iranian regime, that the United States' involvement in this is towards decapitating the head of the Iranian regime. They say that from what they can understand, the attacks were concentrated in areas where the Supreme Leader may well be living. And so the intention was to try and take out the head of the regime and then see what would happen afterwards. Now, many countries have warned the United States about an extended effort to try and force regime change in Iran. They wanted to know what was the plan for the day after and the day after that and the day after that, simply because you couldn't guarantee that if you removed the Supreme Leader, that necessarily what would happen with that a pro-Western, pro-United States government form in his absence. And so there could be a great deal of bloodshed in the aftermath, and they were concerned that would leak over borders, that would cause instability across the region, and they would be dragged into a regional war of some description. Now, as I say, that's just someone who is an analyst who understands these things far better than I do, but they suggest that this was a move at decapitation, but it would certainly fit in with some of the ideas that have been floated recently, not least by Lindsey Graham, who was travelling with Donald Trump on Friday, who has said often that he would like to see the Supreme Leader being replaced. So it may well be that the United States involvement in this was limited to intelligence, but given the size of the US military buildup in the region, there's every possibility that American hardware, American service personnel was also used.
Yeah, well, they're definitely really focusing on cutting off the head, in hopes that the rest of that regime body will crumble.
Right. If you remember, it's how Israel did it also. They started taking out certain of the leadership for that very same reason, and then hopefully it'll dismantle those underneath.
That's right. Well, with the ongoing retaliatory strikes from Iran on various nations in the Middle East, Qatar has recently released a statement saying, quote, "The state of Qatar expresses its strongest condemnation of the targeting of Qatari territories with Iranian ballistic missiles, considering it a flagrant violation of its national sovereignty, a direct assault on its security and safety and its lands, and an unacceptable escalation that threatens the security and stability of the region."
Well, the Qatar Minister of Foreign Affairs continued to say they affirm that the state of Qatar reserves its full right to respond to this targeting in accordance with the provisions of international law and in proportion to the nature of the aggression in defense of its sovereignty and to safeguard its security and national interests.
The ministry emphasized that the state of Qatar has been and remains among the first to call for dialogue with the Islamic Republic of Iran and advocated for continuing on this principle as the optimal foundation for addressing differences and resolving disputes through peaceful means. So, Qatar is saying their goal is to spare the region from escalation, which would lead to all-out war.
And really what Qatar is doing, Katan, they're taking that initial step, the first country really to come out and say that, look, we do not want to be involved in this conflict, and this conflict could very much escalate into that regional war that many people have said that this is the very clear and possibility of it starting a small conflict and then reaching outward to engulf the whole region. So Qatar taking the step saying, look, we're pushing dialogue, we're pushing more peaceful means, obviously, is what they're trying to say, rather than a war.
Right, because one of Iran's goals in targeting these different places is that there are American bases, American allies with these different countries. So not necessarily the Qataris themselves, but because of their association with the United States.
And even Russia has made the statement before that an attack on Iran could very well lead to a global, catastrophe, especially, going from there, escalating outward and involving all countries.
That's right.
Well, if you want to learn more about these stories, contact the House of Yahweh. When you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the monthly newsletter and Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. You can visit any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And don't forget the Israel Says and Ask Israel programs available for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week online to aid you in your study and understanding of the scriptures. You can find those programs by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another classic message from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.